Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. This is Kenny, and
Kenny squared.
there you go. Awesome. And we have got a couple of topics tonight. We're coming to you on a Tuesday, a little bit of an off day for us because of the Super Bowl this weekend. And so, Kenny, how you doing, first of all right?
I'm doing good. It's freezing here in Cleveland, so it's a good thing that they do the Super Bowl here.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to do a cold weather Super Bowl again for quite some time after here in New York, and they got that scare that it might have snowed. I think it snowed that week
Yeah.
before. Yeah. Hey, so I mean, what more can we add here? Super Bowl 55 in the books. Listen, the NFL did a great job getting the season finished. Who thought that they get to there? And I love that all of the our 8,000 or so, right, of essential workers got the opportunity to go to the game. Well deserved. I wish they could just fill that stadium up with folks. Um, but a good job there. The weekend, had the halftime show. I think he was good. But man, oh man, there's this guy named Tom Brady, and you called it. I mean, you said at the beginning of the year that they would win it, and so I will let you go first. What are your overall thoughts here on Super Bowl 55?
Well, I could go a lot of directions here, but I will start with this because my friends were talking about this earlier. I think you can make the argument that Tom Brady just had the greatest playoff run ever. I saw that this was the first time that anyone has beaten 3 Super Bowl MVPs in the same season, in the same postseason, I should say.
Yeah.
Beating Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and then Patrick Mahomes is very impressive. I think something that kind of sticks out that not a lot of people talked about is like the way that he kind of turned around right before half. Like they went from being like a 14-10 game to like taking like a 21-3 lead. And I know part of that is like the Chiefs didn't manage the clock perfectly, but like Tom Brady took advantage whenever he could. And I think like a lot of people, I've seen people say stuff like, well, he has such a great roster. He didn't have a better roster than the Chiefs, and yet still was able to like not just beat them, but like soundly beat them. And I know part of that is a lot of it's due to the defense. Your boy Todd Bowles did a great job calling the defensive game. I had read that a couple of very interesting stats. He was excellent. So Patrick Mahomes ran almost 500 yards in like scrambling yardage.
Wow.
I believe the exact number was 497.
Is that right? Wow.
And that's not talking like rushes or anything.
Right.
So that's one. Secondly, the Tampa Bay front defensive line created, I think it's 26 or 29 pressures throughout the Super Bowl, which is the most ever in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They did a lot of rushing without blitzing. And I know like the Chiefs offensive line was a little shaky, but I think they did a really good job of not sending extra guys, which meant that Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill were fully covered. I think that really helped, it helped contain Patrick Mahomes. And I think a lot of people that are slamming Mahomes, like I look at those 2 throws that he made from like pretty much down on the ground where he just like pelleted the ball and it hit the guy in the helmet. Like what in the world?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I agree with all that, and especially the Todd Bowles and the defense, what they came up with. And you're forgetting your guy JPP getting another ring in another team. Yeah.
I don't know if he'll have a finger to put it on though.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. Well, I let's stay with that for a second because I have it down here in my notes. I put here Mahomes never settled down. Like and I put also that there was no adjustment from the Chiefs. They never established a running game. They never really started throwing it underneath to Kelsey until like the fourth quarter. What was the deal there? I mean, Mahomes, he just looked so shaky. Like usually when the rush is coming at him is when he's at his best. But there was just something off. And you know, he's having surgery, I think, tomorrow. That his they call it turf toe, right? But it's got to be really bad if he has to have surgery. But
Yeah.
why do you think the Chiefs didn't adjust, which is not, you know, typical of an Andy Reid coach team? Why didn't the Chiefs adjust? I mean, it was so apparent. Tony Romo said in the first series exactly what, you know, Tampa was doing with their safeties and their defensive backs.
Yeah, I don't know. I think part of it is the Bible verse that says pride comes before the fall.
Yeah.
I feel like the Chiefs thought that they could win just by playing their game. And I think they didn't realize, like, oh, wait, this is going to look a little different than we expected. And also, like, Patrick Mahomes, I think he tried his best. But he's also never experienced that type of adversity. Like, that was the first time he lost by double digits ever, which to me is like amazing. Yeah. And also it's the first time he like lost a playoff game in regulation, let alone regular season. But like, I think to me, from what it looked like, they were like, well, we know we're better than them, so we don't have to adjust. But like, I feel like that's what happens with a lot of people that end up being out of touch. Like you see, like, whether it's like coaches, players, Carmelo Anthony is one that comes to mind. Like, he came in the league when it was a mid-range game. It was right in his wheelhouse, but like he never learned how to shoot a three. And I think because of that, he kind of became old and out of touch quick. Or like I look at some pastors that are still like pastoring the way that they did like back in the 80s or the 90s. And like our church and our world is just very different. So and I think that's something where Jesus says, like, we have to like live in the culture so that we're relevant and that we could talk to people. But at the same time, we need to be like setting the culture as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. You know, it goes that deep for sure. And it was surprising to me, you know, I mean, it was a lousy game. It never really was close or anything like that. I was hoping this was going to be a really good game. That's all I was really hoping for. Let me bounce off some things. And I did a podcast for work yesterday about the leadership lessons of Tom Brady that I saw. And I mean, so thinking of adjustments, and so Brady is definitely playing different than he did back in 2000, right? In 2001, 2002, you know, so you would think that the Chiefs would have really adjusted. But, you know, when you think about Brady, and how does this compare to some other great leaders? I really was thinking about LeBron James, not going to knock him. But Brady has the ability, even when he was in New England, to really recruit some great players. And the three that came to mind, Gronkowski, you know, he was a guy had to be enjoying retirement. But one phone call, right, from Brady, and he's like, okay, I'm coming back. You know, Antonio Brown, he probably, with all of his checkered past, I'm sure there were teams that would have given him an opportunity to bring him back. But it was Brady that convinced Bruce Arians, hey, let's give this guy another shot. And then Leonard Fournette, who knows why Jacksonville cut him? It had to be probably a salary thing. But the first person that called him is Tom Brady. Fournette didn't even listen to another offer. How many teams could have used him? But he's like, Tom Brady called me, I'm coming. And I remember LeBron James in Cleveland for all those years. I mean, God bless him. He did a phenomenal job carrying that team. But aside from Kyrie Irving, he really couldn't get another top flight player to come with him. I mean, he's gotten, you know, Anthony Davis now with the Lakers. But when he was in Cleveland, people didn't want to go play with him. Whereas that with Brady, you know, even in New England, they ran to go play with him. Randy Moss, and you can go on and on. So what do you think that is about him that just attracts this top talent?
I think part of it is that winning mentality. Like, and you kind of saw it just in the way that like he was still sitting there. Even afterwards, he's like, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm I'm gonna play till I'm 44 at least.
Yeah.
I think like just having that I want to win mentality is something that not a lot of quarterbacks have. Like, not to knock on him a little bit, but Aaron Rodgers, I feel like he doesn't really have that. I think he's very good, he's very talented, but like I don't know if he has that insane hunger to win the way like a Tom Brady does. Or like somewhat Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's still early in his career to kind of say that, but like some of those guys that like that they're really like dying for that opportunity. Stephon Diggs, I think, is one too. I don't know if you saw when they were celebrating. He was the last one watching the celebration happen. Like you can
Oh,
kind of tell, like
notice. Yeah.
he's ready. Like I want to get there next year. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's part of it.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Aaron Rodgers. I don't think there's many human beings that have the will to win like he does. Maybe Michael Jordan did. I do think LeBron does, but Wayne Gretzky. I mean, there's just a very few that you've seen that have that type of will to win. I'll share something funny with you. My boss's boss, who doesn't know much about football, said, "Hey, when is Tom Brady retiring?" And I said, "He's never retiring." I'm like, let me relate a story to you though, because then I'll tell you this ties in with that. I'm sure he's going to retire one day, but he related the story a few years ago, and I went and looked it back up. Years ago, when he was at Michigan, there was an equipment guy who wore all of the rings, and he had 20 some odd rings of Michigan, winning the Big Ten back when Michigan was winning the Big Ten. That hasn't happened for a while, right? But
yeah,
and so Brady said, wow, this is fantastic. You don't even have enough fingers for these. And he said, well, let me tell you, what my favorite ring is? And he said, which one? He said, the next one. And Brady heard that years ago, and that's his mentality. I guarantee you that whatever celebration, I didn't watch much news or anything today, but if they had their celebration in town, I guarantee you that he's already thinking about who can I recruit for next year? How can I get back to the Super Bowl? He already started thinking about that, like probably on the plane ride back home. He's just got that next mentality. Here's the other thing. I think that Brady has, and you don't see this in too many leaders. And I think I see it in a lot of leaders at my company over the years. I'd like to see it more, but Brady has that ability to bring out the best in people. And when you think about the New England teams on offense, how many superstars did you really have? You had Randy Moss in the Hall of Fame, right? But Moss was only there 1, maybe 2 years, I think.
Yeah, he set records those years too.
He did. Think about these names though: Danny Amendola, Julian Edelman, very, very good player, MVP of the Super Bowl. But what did he do this year? Some of the running backs, like Garrett Blunt, Kevin Falk, Lawrence Maroney, James White. What have these guys done since Brady has left? And it's so funny. In the short periods of time, he just brought out the best in all those guys. Wes Welker. Wes Welker, I think, went to Denver after he left, the Patriots, never did anything again. And so he just has this ability to bring out the best in people and at those specific times when it's needed most. I mean, Edelman, how many big games did he play in and make big catches, and again, not taking anything away from any of those guys, but it's Brady that has that ability to bring out the best in people. And that's a rare quality. It really is. I think that's a God-given quality, whether he knows it or not. And so here's my last thing on Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians. I mean, this guy is 68 years old. He's the oldest coach, right, to win a Super Bowl. And he seems like a heck of a nice guy. He's paid his dues. He's been an assistant coach for years. He got that opportunity, remember, with Indianapolis, and he did well, there. And then it's like, I'm done. I'm retired, and he wasn't happy. So he comes back, gets an opportunity here. but he puts together probably the most diverse coaching staff that's ever been put together. He's got Todd Bowles, Byron Leftwich. He's got a couple of female top flight assistants, on his squad, and he just puts trust in people. You could just tell that, and he gets his rewards this late in life at 68 years old. Not that, that's old, but it's old to be a Super Bowl winning coach for the first time,
Yeah.
And so I think it's such a tribute. I think the Chiefs will be back. I just it was hard for me to pick against them, so I didn't, but I was really surprised that it was so one-sided.
Yeah. Like, if you would have told me the Super Bowl was going to be a blowout, I would have assumed, oh, the Chiefs just like went off and won by 40 or something. I think most people, like, if you would have told me Patrick Mahomes would score 0 touchdowns and have 2 picks, I'd be a little surprised.
Yeah. Well, listen, we'll see. It should be an exciting offseason with all these quarterbacks moving around. And so we'll see. But I mean, I can't bet against, not that I'm betting, but I can't bet against Tampa Bay not being there again. It's just an incredible achievement what he did.
And also, did you see the T-Mobile commercial with Tom Brady and
of course Gronk? Yeah, they didn't.
That one was good.
Yeah, they didn't allow T-Mobile to play that at the Super Bowl, so you didn't see it during the Super Bowl, right?
No.
The other provider, I won't say, said nah. It's a little bit too good. I'm sorry, you can't play that. The Anthony Anderson one was good though. They allowed us to play that. So. All right, hey, we're gonna shift gears, and this will be the only other topic that we have today because I know we've gotten some folks watching our podcast, and it's great. And I hope if you watch this, as we're going to touch on a relatively serious subject and tie it in with sports, tie it in with God as well. And we hope that if you do know anyone that is even hinting at or contemplating or even thinking about suicide, that you have them look up the name Drew Robinson. And I can't see that E60 just yet because it's on ESPN Plus and I don't have that. I can't wait till I'm able to see that. But did see the article. It was a long article that I sent you. And, I didn't realize also Andrelton Simmons contemplated suicide. That was why he missed like the last 5 games of the year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But I'll start the story by saying this, Ken, and I want you to please chime in and fill in the blanks here. A very good friend of mine at work had her nephew, contemplate suicide, and he did. And like Drew Robinson, he wasn't successful. And so one of the things that's the difference, because Drew Robinson, the good part of the story is that he seems to have bounced back. But my friend's nephew said, I don't know why, I'm still here. I don't know why I was saved. And so my friend did a actual TED talk around what happens to folks that commit suicide and are unsuccessful, right? What do we do with that? And so suicide alone, or even the thought of it, it's not a God thing. It's not a God thing. And there's probably several scriptures that, we could find there. And it doesn't matter where you're at in life in terms of success or not. We've had folks like Robin Williams, one of the most successful comedians of all time, movie actors of all time, commit suicide. And so none of that really matters, but the despair and the loneliness can matter. And being able to talk to people, which is what Drew Robinson's lesson is what really matters, right? And heck, for us, being able to pray and to talk to God and read the Bible, to me, is what really matters, right? In the secular world and in the practical world, though, God didn't mean for people to be by themselves and be lonely, and that's just not his will. Even he, mingled among people. Yes, there were the times where he went, on a mountain and prayed by himself or whatever. Yeah, of course. But for the most part, he was around people. And so I'll set the story up. Drew Robinson, I wouldn't call him a greatly successful baseball player, but he made it to the major leagues and kind of bounced up and down with Texas, then with St. Louis, and now with the Giants. But there was something always missing, he said, right? There were some things that always bothered him. He never thought he was good enough. He still, even though he had good family support, he felt like he didn't have any support. So on April 16th, 2020, and this is where the story was, it's tragic and amazing at the same time. He comes to the conclusion that he's going to take his life, and he actually at first wants to do it in his car. He goes to a park, but there's kids playing at the park. He says, maybe this isn't the right place. I really don't want to die in my car. So he goes back home, and he lives by himself. And it takes him a while. This is very early in the morning. Then he goes through the afternoon. And finally at 8 o'clock at night, he goes in his bedroom and he says, this is where I'm going to die. And he shoots himself. He shoots himself in the head. And this is a God thing. Miraculously, he survives. The bullet goes through one side of his head, the left side, and goes out the right side. And he thought he was going to die because he's bleeding profusely, but yet he goes in the bathroom and he gets a towel to try to stop the bleeding, goes in the shower to try to stop the bleeding. He's bleeding a lot, but he doesn't feel any pain. So he's thinking that he's dying. He lays in his bed and he goes to sleep for the night, thinking that he's going to go to sleep and he's just going to bleed to death or he's going to die. But that towel that he put up there really saved his life because it stopped the bleeding. So he wakes up the next morning early and he's wondering, why am I still here? Why am I still alive? And so all sorts of thoughts are running through his head all day long. And he gets to a point, now it's a miracle that he survives this, right? That he's still alive overnight. And so, and I'll cut to the chase, the bullet missed all of the major arteries. The odds of that happening are so minuscule that the doctors said that they had never seen that before. So he's struggling the next day. Kenny, it's not till 4 o'clock the next afternoon that he looks on his kitchen counter, his gun is there, and his phone is there. He hadn't looked at any messages. He picks up his phone, he's looking at messages. He's getting ready to answer them, but he's saying, why am I answering messages, Because now people are wondering where he's at. Is he going to be okay? I guess his brother actually used his garage to fix his car, something like that. So his brother was actually at his house, had no idea what was going on inside, Instead of picking up the gun, which he did a couple of times, he puts the gun down, he picks up the phone, he calls 911. And he finally calls 911 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the police break the door in because they don't know if it's a hoax, because they don't believe the story. That he shot himself in the head 8 o'clock the night before and he's still alive. So he has some surgery. He does lose his right eye. And so I'll stop there. Hearing this story, which is, he tells it in very much more graphic terms than I just did. What's running through your head?
Well, there's a few different things. I think first of all, if you're someone that lives alone, make sure that you're still connected with people. I do remember when he was talking about it, one of the things that really brought him into a much darker place was quarantine. So right. I think that's something that's really important, is if you're by yourself, make sure that you're talking to somebody, whether it's a friend, a family member, a neighbor, whoever. But then also, secondly, if you don't live alone and you know someone that does, check in on them, make sure that they're good. but also I think just in general, you look at his story and you kind of wonder like, wow, like God's definitely have a purpose for him. Whether that's to like help people that are in a dark place like he was. I think also a lot of what he was going through, he had a lot of like unresolved issues with not just with himself, but also a lot of issues with his family because he was like a child of divorce.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
had a lot of like relationship issues as well because like that one girl that he went back and forth with and then would just like break up with her even though he loved her. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like there was a lot of self-worth things. And I think it shows too that like it doesn't matter whether you make it to the major leagues, it doesn't matter whether you are successful wherever you are. Without Jesus, you are completely unsatisfied. Um, like he thought he was never good enough. Jesus says that you are good enough. He thought that he can never achieve. The Bible says that no, you can't on your own, but that's why we
Yeah.
have Jesus.
Yeah.
Um, so like, and also I think, yeah, God definitely has a purpose for his life because how else would he still be here? Like, not many people shoot themselves in the head and can live to tell the tale.
Yeah. It is amazing. I'm glad you said all that. Um, you know, he he feels very strongly now. Well, let me say this first because I had to keep reading this one line that he said as he was contemplating that day of putting the gun to his head. He kept asking himself, "Who would care if I died?" And he felt like no one would. He kept answering the question for himself that no one would care, and that obviously wasn't the case as his family was devastated by what had happened to him. They were angry at themselves, especially his brother, that they had grown apart and they didn't really have a clue that he was in this dark of a place. So to your point, no one was checking on him probably, and he probably isolated himself further, like you said, after COVID, because it was about a month and a half later, that he does this on April 16th of 2020. But that struck me, if I asked myself that, who would care if I died? Oh my gosh, I have a very long list, and that is because of God, right? God has put so many people that love and care for me, in my life. And to not be able to answer that question, I stuck on that line when I was reading the article, you know. But the good news is that, right, he felt like, oh my gosh, right, a building got to fall on your head now. He feels like that's a huge sign because he has two holes in his head, one from one side, one from where the bullet went out. And he feels like it's a huge sign that it's to help others. And he kept saying in that article that he feels like he's free now. But he wants to make sure that people don't misunderstand that. An attempted suicide is not freedom. After you can't get to that point. And his point is that you got to be able to, to talk to people. And he said he still has his moments, not where he's contemplated suicide, but where he's gone into a dark place. The Giants, did you read the part about Gabe Kapler?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So
I don't remember that part.
They're keeping him on the team regardless whether he makes it or not. So they let him go in the minor league. So he's gonna, obviously, spring training coming up, he's gonna, be a viable candidate to make the major league team. But Gabe Kapler told him either way he wants him around. So whether that is to speak to other people, right, and he put him right away in the minor league camp to speak to some of the minor leaguers. He said he got ownership's permission that they're keeping him, if not as a player on the team, somewhere close to the team. Which is great. Yeah, that's going to definitely help his mental health. Is it Alex Dickerson is the outfielder, right, for the Giants?
Yeah.
He said that he's already helped him a lot because they're were times where he's felt the same way because, Dickerson's also had kind of an up and down major league career. And, so Drew Robinson is really now devoting himself to help others. And, he's getting, help. He's seeing counselors almost on a daily basis. He proposed to his fiance, so he's going to be getting married. But it's just an amazing story. But I mean, you said it all, that we can't do it ourselves. I think God made doctors and counselors for a reason. Certainly God made pastors for a reason, right? And most pastors are also counselors. And so I think that you just have to talk to people. You can't just keep everything in. I see. So I neither one of us have said once that he's lucky. I think because we know why he's still here. We know why that bullet didn't hit, a major artery, in his brain. We know why. He doesn't really even have brain damage. His only thing is that he lost his eye. I shouldn't say only thing because that's a big deal. But I don't think there's ever been a major leaguer that has just one eye. So if he makes the major leagues this year, it'll be really amazing. Yeah. So, final thoughts on that story, Ken, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I think number one, we talked about how Alex Smith has had quite the remarkable comeback. I think this one would be bigger. And I'm not even saying the guy has to be an all-star and hit 300, but if he could even come close to making the major league roster with one eye, that'd be really impressive in and of itself. But I think kind of just to go back to what I had said before, I was kind of skimming through the article here. And one of the things that it stuck out is guy said he was popular in high school. He seemed to have everything going his way. And you had mentioned Robin Williams. And there's plenty of other people that you can kind of put here. But success doesn't always mean happiness. I think so often people think that people that are successful are always necessarily happy, and that's not always the case. I think something else that kind of stuck out to me was when you were talking about how he still has those dark thoughts. And I think sometimes as Christians, yes, we get delivered from stuff and we never have to worry about it again. But sometimes part of the reason why we still have to rely on Christ is because sometimes you have to put to death daily the things that are bringing you down, whether that's mental health, whether that's an addiction. I've had people say I'm glad that I'm not on drugs anymore, but to say that I never crave drugs again would be a lie. So I think sometimes it kind of makes it a little bit more normal, because I feel sometimes people, let's say they were addicted to something for a really long time and they slip up once, and then they feel guilty and feel well, I'm not a Christian anymore. No, God still loves you, and it's okay. The whole point is that we have to continue to die on the cross daily to whatever those fleshly desires may be. So I think it's really a remarkable story. I can definitely say I'm glad that he's alive. And he'll be an interesting story to watch, especially early on in spring training. I'm assuming he'll probably get a couple of really good looks here, just to at least give him a chance.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm rooting for him. And I think everybody else is going to be rooting for him too. So, all right. Well, we'll be back next week we'll talk some Knicks next week. The Knicks are just, I can't wait to go up in stairs and see they're playing Miami tonight. So, so Kenny, why don't you take us home, Kenny?
Yeah, new players should be there tonight. So this is Kenny Squared. Yeah, this is Kenny Squared and
Hey, Kenny.
The Sports on the Positive Tip. We will see you next week. Go Knicks.
All right, go Knicks.